Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Parent Pod here with Cape Cod Moms. Every week, we are bringing to you local businesses, highlighting education and other resources in our community, as well as a little bit of fun, some giveaways, and some other things. This week, we are once again joined by Tina and Christine from Cape Cod Advocate, and we're going to be talking about the closing of the first quarter grades. We're going to be talking about special education learning plans, COVID compensatory services, and how to plan for a school shutdown, as well as take your questions live on the air. So I hope you have put aside this hour. It is for you. And I hope you find this worthwhile and a lot of fun. So right now I'm going to bring on Tina and Christine, and we'll get started. Here we go. Good evening, ladies. How are you? Nice to see you again.
Good evening. Hi.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I'm glad you guys could come back again. We had a lot of information that we went over last time. And so we'll just get right to it. Can you just introduce yourselves again for our audience who might not have seen you last time?
Sure. Tina, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Tina Qvarnstrom, advocate with Cape Cod Advocate with Christine Riley as a partner. I'm a mom of two, 18 and 20, no more minors. So that's a little crazy. And I've been home since March. I was just looking at our picture from our website. I haven't worn a necklace since, 9 months? Or maybe put on earrings either. It's a little crazy. But I've been an advocate for almost 10 years now, I think. And I love it. It's been great.
Yeah. I'm Christine Riley. I work with Tina. We started Cape Cod Advocate back in 2005, and I live on the Cape with my husband and adult son, and we, take care of families from the South Shore all the way to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. So our job is to sort of help negotiate for families with school districts, special ed services. So that's our job.
So it was a couple weeks ago when we first met, and we talked about it was kind of really as school was gearing up to go. And so we had a vision of what the school year was going to look like. And for the most part, we've gotten rolling, and some things have gone really well, and some things we're hitting a couple hiccups and bumps along the road. And so what are you seeing as we close in on this first quarter and this fall in terms of the closing of the first quarter grades, what parents are seeing, and what to expect right now? Because it's a short quarter, really. I mean, they didn't really go into school until October. I don't really count that first week in September. So.
I think it was a new adventure for everyone, just learning how to adjust to the new normal and to make sure everybody was safe, and then comply with what the state was issuing, which they continue to issue, almost daily. So I think it was a slow, kind of a bumpy start, but I feel like we're sort of getting our groove, and hopefully we'll be able to stay open, and people will stay healthy. That's my concern. So believe it or not, the first quarter is closing or has closed within the last 4 days. So normally, back in the old days, maybe your child would receive a paper report card. That's not going to be issued this time in most school districts. So you'll need to check your parent portal. Sometimes it's referred to as Aspen or something like that. So if you don't see that by, I would say early next week, time to send an email to your teachers saying, help me find that information. It's going to have critical information in it for us.
So how come some schools are doing that and some are not?
Doing the parent portal?
Doing the first quarter. Are all the schools doing first quarter reporting for the grades and the reports or no?
Well, some schools, districts are on quarters and they give a report card, and don't forget an IEP progress report. Every time a report card is issued, you should get an IEP progress report. Some are doing it 3 times a year.
Okay.
So it's either you get it 4 times a year on the quarter, or you're getting it 3 times a year.
So if you can remember what you received last year, most likely that's the, the same type of timeline. So if it's a quarter, it's usually right around this time of the year. And then if it's on a semester or a trimester, it's usually mid-December. So,
and I think a lot of the high schools, end up putting the report cards on the portal, whether it's Aspen or X2, like Chris said, maybe in some of the middle schools. A lot of the elementary schools have always, mailed those out. But you might see them come electronically, not be mailed out this year.
yeah.
Okay. And so what kind of information, what have they really done this first quarter? Have they been assessed at where they're at where they may have lost some stuff due to regression? Is that what we're kind of looking at when we look at this first quarter report?
Yeah, I think it's going to be critical. So one of the things that they were sort of charged with doing, and they do it every year, is take baseline and benchmark data. So every child, regardless of whether they're special ed or not, would receive general ed benchmark testing. So that's sometimes it's called IXL, iReady. They refer to, sometimes they just say benchmark assessments, and it's reading and math primarily. And so the reason why we're so, strung up about this is that much of that information was not able to be taken last year when we left. And so we need data to find out where a child is when they re-entered school to help figure out what adjustments we need to make and whether a child's entitled to additional services because of that time.
When we look at that, are we comparing it as a parent? When I receive this report, what is my best prior comparison point? It's obviously not going to be the end of the school year report where it was basically pass, fail, or you're progressed to the next grade. So am I looking at the prior report from that really as the last time a baseline was taken to this year's baseline at this first quarter? Those are the 2 reports I'm comparing as the parent.
Yeah, the one you got in February or March, most of them were issued in March. So that last March progress reporting that you got, that's what I'm comparing the data to. The ones that you'll see that were issued in June, a lot of them said that they couldn't provide the information. The services weren't provided or they didn't have access to it. So they did most school districts issued progress reports or report cards at the end of the year, but not a lot of data was on it.
And so then when we're looking at this, where, as a parent, where do we become concerned? I mean, we know that there's going to be a little bit of regression, whether you're a neurotypical child or not. And so where is the line really to be major, like, okay, we got to deal with this, like, right now?
Well, one of the things is that parent input is important. So you saw in March how a child was able to manage remote learning and how they did. And part of it was that we had a huge growth or bump on how to shift to remote learning. But the actual underlying skill set, how did they do? And now how are they doing now in school? Are they still resisting, going to school? Are they resisting reading? I'm talking for elementary school kids. Are they throwing a fit when it's time to sit down and do math? I think not only is the actual physical data, like the number data is important, but also the anecdotal data that sometimes is getting overlooked. So as a mom or a parent, you saw how your child behaved last fall at this time and last, early winter, Christmas time last year. And now how are they, managing? Granted, it's a different school year and a different grade, but I think it'll give you an idea whether, they're doing all right. Tina, what do you think?
Yeah, and I think as far as the academics is a recoupment period there. So, the state said that the team should meet by December 15th to go over compensatory services, regression, what is owed, what isn't owed. And I think December 15th was probably selected because that gave, like 3 months for students to be back in school or having their remote services if they chose to be remote, and just to give them a little bit of time with instruction to see if they were able to recoup those skills. And if they are able to recoup those skills, then really no compensatory services are going to be offered or going to be provided. But if there's still significant regression at that point by December 15th, that's when the team should be talking about a plan for compensatory services.
I want to come back to that a little bit later, Tina, because I have a specific question. I'm going to write it down actually, so I
Okay.
And are there things that parents, like, are there some forms or anything like that? What should parents be tracking that they're observing at home? Like, what's the best way to track it so that they have feedback with these reports?
Well, I think the first thing is like they're going to give you information. Hopefully it's the benchmark information that everyone underwent. But what sometimes they fail to provide, unless you ask for it, is the previous year's benchmarks. So they can say, oh, he's making great progress. But if last year at this time he was, a child was reading at a, 7th grade level, and this benchmark came out as a 5th grade and he's a 4th grader, then, the teacher's going to assume everything is fine. But you need somebody to go back and look at what that data showed last year.
So I like that you brought that up as an example, because a lot of times children and students who are above grade level, that is a type of special ed as well. And so a lot of people don't really think about that. And so a child that has been above average and reading at several grade levels above, and then regresses a little bit, but they're still above grade level or on grade level, it's not looked at as a bigger deal, but to that child, it is a regression. So I like that you brought that up.
Yeah, if you don't have a whole lot of argument because they are at grade level or above grade level, but it is an indication that there was some regression. So it's a harder argument to make because in Massachusetts, they don't recognize gifted as special ed.
And so, but it is important to track it as the parent and be tracking these regressions, because the school may not always see some of the other things that you're seeing as well. So
we had shared a log with our clients on, things to watch for, things to make note of, so they could share with their teams. But I have to tell you, a lot of the families that I work with, those parents did a fantastic job during the closure, because not a lot of students have required compensatory services. They've either come in slightly below or stayed the same. Some even made some great progress. They've got some, really great teachers at home. Parents did a really, really good job in a difficult situation.
That's really good to hear. Are you seeing a lot of people in that area who may qualify for compensatory services in the academic area, or more in other areas like the social emotional or the sensory and things like that? Is there a chart, or is it just kind of scattered across the board?
I think that social emotional probably took the biggest hit, even more so than the academics. I mean, every situation's different, but this has been very difficult. Kids who for years have been talking about, I want to go to a virtual school, I don't want to go in, they can't wait to be back in school now. It's amazing.
Well, and I think it was a stressful situation. I think that, not to make it more dramatic than it already is, but I think some kids have PTSD as a result of it. I mean, it was very jarring back in March. And as a parent, it was hard to maintain calm and oh yeah, it's no big deal, we'll figure it out. So I think kids fed off of that. And I think so they were anxious going back to school. And now, you can't help but hear people talking about spikes and, whether we're going to go out again. So I think you have to keep a close eye on that social emotional piece. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think that being back at school kind of gives that routine, that consistency. It's a stabilizing force. And I've said it to a couple people. I'll say it again tonight. I honestly think the schools are one of the safest places to be right now because the kids are more regimented than the rest of us at home and out here. And they know the rules. They know the routines. They are listening to their nurse videos. I mean, I get lectured all the time by the 10-year-old. He knows it better than me. He knows what makes a difference. He knows the routine. And they're constantly cleaning there. So I'm like, I almost want to take a job at there because it might be safer.
I'll tell you, I have a new appreciation and respect for homeschool parents. I was not meant to teach my own children. I wasn't meant to teach, period, but I certainly wasn't meant to teach my own children. I think that's very, very difficult to make that shift, and I think families did a great job doing that.
Yeah.
Very challenging.
Yeah, and I think schools were initially flat-footed in March, but they sort of got their act together as well, and were able to adapt. I think if nothing else, you know how like we always tell children to be fluid, go with the flow, learn to adjust. You know what? It was a great lesson for us adults on learning how to adjust and how hard it is to shift when life is different than what you are anticipating or used to.
Yeah.
Are you seeing an increase in parents who requesting testing because they're seeing regression in certain areas?
That's a good question. I don't know that I'm seeing an increase.
There was such a backlog in the spring that we're still catching
through it.
Yeah. So I think maybe after this first quarter or this first trimester, when we have an idea of grades, we'll have a better idea. I also think that the hybrid part of learning for the older students is still a work in progress. And I think kids are really still learning how to learn through a digital medium. We just assume people would learn how to, could do that. And we have to go back and teach kids and parents and adults, teachers, how to do.
I think that's the biggest challenge for families who weren't so tech savvy to try to help their kid. I mean, I still struggle to sign on to any Google Doc. I mean, it'll take me 10 minutes to do it, if I can do it. I know, I struggle with that. So, and I do this every day, and so for families, just plopped into it, March, April, I guess April, when schools started to reopen virtually, what a struggle for them.
Most to teachers, they literally spent their entire summer getting ready.
They did.
There was one teacher in Falmouth that I could not get over the preparation that she did to make sure that the fall reentry was a soft landing and kids did really well. And holy cow, it was a lot of work.
And it really is all hands on deck. I mean, we've got reading interventionists running, being a general ed teacher for a third grade classroom. I mean, they've all shifted their roles this year, or many have shifted their roles this year. And, that's coming up with curriculum and everything. So it really has been all hands on deck.
I think my biggest concern for the older kids, the high school age kids, is that I don't think teachers have adjusted their pace. And so I think that is becoming, I'm seeing more of an issue, that you just can't keep up with the pace that it would normally go through if you were in person.
I totally agree. I think the honors classes, the AP, the IB,
even the general ed.
Yeah.
Just
it's
almost like a fatigue because it is more digital, which you're not usually used to until you get to that college pace.
Yeah.
And even then, it's hyper focused, very niche specific. So you have more time to delve into topics. So I think you're right. The pace, we're not used to blending it with this virtual system.
Yeah. And I think teachers are assuming that kids in general are more independent, both with the digital piece of it and then the academic piece. And I don't think that's the case for everybody.
That's really, really good point, because pre-pandemic, I actually went into the schools, and it was to lead a group, an after-school group for Interact, for Rotary, and giving back group. And I took for granted prior to this that they wouldn't need my intervention on how to run a meeting, how the president and secretary is supposed to work, how to execute your vision and run the meeting itself. And so myself and another person went in and taught them, basically modeled it for them. And I remember the other person saying after, I took for granted, and I did too, we just assumed they would know that. But they're kids. They don't know everything or the big picture of how it's all supposed to, all those moving parts are supposed to work, and even some of that technology that they're still learning it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to guesstimate that like 80% of my clients have executive functioning as a goal on their IEP. So to be home or to be remote and trying to juggle all of these things, different Zoom links and, things changing all the time and the schedule changing. And they used to have 4 blocks in the high school and now they have 3. That's a lot for them to manage when they don't have that skill set.
And many students don't have that problem solving gene, and you know what I mean? And so they're still learning how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes the problem, their solution is just to walk away.
Yeah.
And so,
multi-step things are not their cup of tea.
Especially because nowadays people tend to be, you want that input, that immediate gratification.
Oh, yeah.
Technology, it can go wrong at the drop of a hat. And that can be frustrating. And like you said, for kids, older or younger, still developing that problem-solving skill, that's like mind-blowing for them. That will set a whole rest of the day off course.
Yeah.
And another example, I think, of typing. Like, I didn't learn how to type till 7th grade, and we came back expecting this year kindergartners who have been kindergartners last year, and our 1st graders to be able to type. And it's like, even the 3rd graders who went to 4th grade, they just started typing. So they're like very slow, methodical, where it would be just easier for them to handwrite everything.
Well, in some cases, at that grade level, we're still doing letter recognition, number recognition. So very, very challenging.
Yeah.
I think about that, and hopefully we're past it for next year, because I have an incoming kindergartner, and I can't even imagine her learning how to do letter recognition on a keyboard and it would be. And
the keyboard doesn't match the alphabet.
No.
Let's add another complexion to that.
I know. I think, for the little kids, they need to be in person. I don't know how, like 4th grade and under, it's just impossible, I think.
Yeah, the literacy skills really, there's no way to teach literacy, and literacy is the foundation of everything. You have to be literate. You have to read, you have to write. You can't do anything really without that skill. And it is. You have to be in person. You have to hear it. You have to watch the mouth forming it. You have to watch how it's formed with your hand. It's really a hands-on skill to do that. So.
Yeah. And I don't want to jinx anything, but I think the schools have done a good job so far. Not a lot of cases in the building, so that's all wonderful.
And it tends to be, it looks like the majority of them have either been hybrid or they locked it down pretty quick. The protocols are working. And that's a good thing. You know, that tells us, all right, it's not actively spreading out of control. So that gives me hope going into the holiday.
Me too. I know.
I think that the education has profoundly changed as a result of COVID. Some for the good and some for the bad. But holy cow, we have made leaps and bounds with technology and learning, and it will only get better. My concern about COVID, especially for the younger kids, is the social skills that they're missing out. We are teaching kids fear over engagement. And so that's one of my touch points, making sure that these students still feel comfortable and can, interact with their peers.
So I got a funny story for you, Christine and Tina. So my son is very much missing out on the social and emotional experience with his peers. He's really missing hanging out with them. He's very frustrated by this. I can't throw a ball to them. I can't do that. Very grouchy. So him and a peer actually invented a game. I don't know exactly how the details of the game, but they were taking turns going to the pencil sharpener in the classroom, sharpening the pencil all the way down to the little tip and then collecting the tips. So it was like, how many times can we go down? How much can we go down each time? Who gets the most tips at the end of the day? They're collecting the tips. They think they're so clever, right?
Yeah.
Well, somehow the pencil sharpener gets broken. And then I got a call about it. And so I just, same day, I went and dropped off the pencil sharpener. But I was chuckling to myself. And when I told the teacher, I was like, how clever is that, though? Because I couldn't even really be mad because I was like, they literally found a way around it to socialize with each other and make some type of game.
Yeah.
Just to have that interaction.
Yeah.
Just to have that.
That kid has skills. I love it.
I was like, give them a medal, like they should get an award for this. But I did suggest to them that they come up with a list and suggest it to the teacher, and they could find an acceptable one that maybe they would all enjoy.
That's not as much fun.
So maybe you could think of something else that might work. Just, think of anything, and she might say yes, just not with a pencil sharpener.
Absolutely.
But they're having to rethink how they socialize, how they interact, and they are missing it. I mean, I hear about it every day how it's not fair.
Yeah.
And it isn't fair. It's not fair to them.
It wasn't the childhood they expected, or wasn't the way it was supposed to go in their minds or our minds.
Yeah.
I even sometimes feel a little bit robbed on behalf of the kids. I sit here and I look, for in our school, fourth graders last year in that elementary school before they go up, and I'm like, everything's gone. Everything's gone. And so that, again, that social emotional piece, what can we do to kind of balance that? How do we find a way around it? Because I think you're right. That is the hardest hit area. And I think it's going to have the longest lasting effects.
Yeah, and I think we need to sort of shift the I don't want to say focus, but shift the attitude more like these kids are being superheroes by keeping their peers safe, as opposed to everybody could be infected. Do you know what I mean? So like doing their part as opposed to just complying.
Oh, I like that. So changing the frame of how we're thinking of it and passing it off to the kids.
Yeah. So.
And I'll tell you, I thought we were going to hear a lot about kids not wearing masks and refusing and taking it off. I'm not hearing that at all. I'm really not.
Yeah.
I'm hearing mask braves and asking appropriately for them, but I am not hearing like being defiant. I mean, I'm sure there's some cases out there, but I have not heard one.
Yeah, one little boy reported that wearing a mask in the cold weather was actually a good thing because you stayed warm.
I was going to say, I like it better in the cold weather too. Now that it's gotten colder, I'm like, oh, it's easier to breathe in it again. That hot weather's killer.
Well, that's looking on the positive side.
That's right. It's like a humidifier in your mouth, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's talk about a little bit about the special ed learning plans. So can you tell a little bit, everybody, what those are for where we're at now?
Go ahead, Chris. You go right ahead.
Okay, so a student on an IEP has a service delivery grid, and that is sort of the recipe on how the services are going to be provided. And so let's just use an example. 5 times a week for 30 minutes, your child is getting specialized reading instruction. Okay, then we throw in COVID, and we have to shift it a little bit. The state asked the school districts to issue a special ed learning plan that sort of outlines like, this is what you're supposed to have, but we're changing things up a little bit because of COVID. Instead of 5 times 30, we might do it 4 times 40 minutes because we're not in school on Wednesdays, that kind of thing. So special ed learning plans were supposed to be issued certainly by now. I think it was in October, Tina, I can't remember. I would just, if you have them, read them and compare them to what's on your service delivery grid. And if you don't understand, start asking questions. And if you haven't received it, I think you need to ask the school district for a copy. That will also come in really handy should the school districts or the building close for a period of time, because we've already sort of worked out how we're going to provide those services.
Yeah, and I think what we've stumbled upon is the state hasn't required the districts to do it. They encouraged the districts to provide them, but they haven't required it. So I will say, I think most have, or most of the districts that we work in have issued them, but there are some that haven't.
Yeah. And I think we were all bombarded with so much material that you may have received it in early or late September and not known what it was. So,
and you did get some in the spring. I'm sorry, Chris, you did get some in the spring. That's a different plan than the one that you're going to get in the fall.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and if you didn't get it, then you just call and talk to your special ed teacher or your general ed teacher or the principal and just say, hey, you know, I was listening to Cape Cod Moms and there's something about a special ed learning plan. I don't have one of those. Can you help me find it?
This is a separate, it's not your IEP and your service delivery grid. This is it's a separate letter that you should have received.
I think it's a COVID learning plan, I think is.
I think that's the letter, what it says on the letter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think different districts are calling it different things. Sometimes they're just issuing a letter to say things are a little different. But just compare it to what's on your service delivery grid and make sure that everything is accounted for, is mainly, you know, that all your goals are being addressed.
Yeah, especially like students that are remote. You know, if it says you're supposed to, you know, if you had reading 5 times 30 minutes and now they're doing it 3 times 30 minutes, but you know they're only getting on once a week. Well, is your student only logging in once a week, or is the reading specialist not available to them 3 times a week? So it's just making sure that all the services are being provided that are supposed to be.
And there's so many moving parts this year. And so we're still trying to make sure that students are getting what they are entitled to. So it's just, you know, one more thing for us to do, but it's something important to double check.
And some districts may be quicker at doing it than the others. Some may still be playing catch up because they might be a little harder hit in certain areas. So, like you said, just call and check. It's easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the CPACs for each school district, they may have some more information too for you. So get involved with the CPACs. Those are special ed parent advisory councils that in like non-COVID days, they would meet like once a month or once every other month. They probably have, many of them have virtual dates that you could sort of zoom in.
Yeah.
And that would be a question for them as well.
Yeah, and the CPACs are great resources for everybody. They do more than just bring in speakers. I mean, they are resources. They will connect you to other services, other people, and their parents in the know or teachers in the know who are living it, breathing it every day. So they are your best resource.
Absolutely.
In your district. They know everything. Usually has been my experience.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about COVID compensatory services. That's been we've heard a little bit about it, the big buzzword. What exactly is it? And have you seen it actually happening? Or how does it work first? And then what are you seeing?
Do you want to jump on this?
Sure.
Tina?
The compensatory services are supposed to be about regression that happened over the spring with the shutdown. So I think we talked about it earlier with the benchmark assessments that were going to be happening in the fall as students re-entered school. We had that delay in September that the state gave the districts to prepare. So then students returned to school, and then between then and now, they've been doing their benchmark testing. It's been all over the board of when they're doing the testing, based on district, based on grade level. Some districts wanted the children in a little bit longer before they did the benchmark testing, you know, which could whatever, could skew it a little bit. But there's got to be regression that was not recouped in a timely manner to qualify for the compensatory services. And the meeting to determine that was supposed to happen before December 15th.
Right. So, and some districts are foregoing the meeting. I would say the takeaway for a parent is that you should be involved in the discussion. So what did you see during the shutdown? How are you feeling about education in general for your child? I think there's really a couple questions that you want to make sure are addressed. And the first one is, are the services on the student's IEP, were they offered or were they not available, or were they not accessed? So we want to talk about that. And then to what extent has the student demonstrated regression? So those are the two main questions that we want to answer as a team. So that's how you have that conversation. We're finding right now that most students, it's hard to believe, are not qualifying for COVID compensatory services, which is a kind of like head scratching. So in normal times, if services are missed, say speech and language is supposed to see your child 2 times a week and they were out on maternity leave for 6 weeks, they need to make those up, and it has to be a 1-to-1 comparison. So 30 minutes a session, they have to make up those sessions that were missed. COVID compensatory services are not 1-to-1, but more of it in general. And they want to look at general ed supports first. What can we add to them that is not special education, but that would provide the instruction that they need? And it will not equal to the same amount of hours that were missed.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I'm hearing is, let's just say it was reading services. It was offered April, May, June, but maybe the student couldn't access it because they weren't doing well with Zoom or whatever that platform was. So it was offered, but not accessed. So if it was offered, no services are given.
But I think there could be an argument to be made.
I do too. Yes. Yeah. But Chris is right. We're not really finding students that have regressed significantly or that it hasn't been able to be recouped.
So this is where my
parents.
Yeah, it's not the parents.
This is where my follow-up question was going to be from earlier then, Tina, because I want to go back to social emotional, because things really can't be assessed in the same way. So a student that had primarily social emotional goals, who the parent knows this child has regressed in this area, but because when they're in school now, they're not in those same situations. So the school's then not seeing it.
Correct.
To me, they're still regressed, because when everything goes back to normal, that skill is not being addressed all this time. And how, you know what I'm saying? Like, they've still regressed with that skill somewhere else. They're just not seeing it there. Mm-hmm. So what do you do about that?
I think that's where your data comes in. And I think the challenge that we're in right now is, what more can they offer in this time of COVID, that's going to be able to be serviceable. They've got to try things within their own building first. I always throw a Hail Mary, and, I'll talk about like a second nature social skills class that I want them to fund or something like that. Those are the harder conversations to get through. And I think it really has to be significant. But I'll tell you, if they're not seeing it in the building, it's not likely to be covered under compensatory services.
It just makes me wonder then what's going to happen when you go back the other way and the restrictions are removed, and then the skill wasn't having to be addressed all the time, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, now we have a major problem that we should have been taking care of for 2-3 years here.
And that's when I think you'll see the spike in evaluation consent forms, people wanting their child evaluated. I think that's when we're going to see the spike.
Yeah, and I think you're right. it's hard to make a decision right now because we're still not back to standard learning. And so it's still, the information is skewed. So I think you're right. When we get back into a full day, 8 to 3 or whatever it is, or 9 to 3, and you're expecting a student to learn in a classroom when they haven't been doing that since March, full time, 2 days a week, that's where we're going to see some problems.
Yeah, they've got to rebuild that endurance and stamina. And I think that they've been doing that for the last couple of months. I mean, they were out of school for 6 months. I mean, it was a long time, sometimes longer. But I would also say some of the things that, we might ask for as far as compensatory services, like, summer programs or different things, services to be worked out like outside of the school year or school day. They're so up in the air that it's a hard ask, and it's hard to get somebody to commit because we don't know if they're going to be running those programs.
Right.
So it's such a different time right now. The things that we normally do, we're not doing.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think one of the things we're going to see the increased need for, not that there isn't already a need for it, because there is more access to the mental health area for youth and adolescents, because especially in this region, as I'm sure both of you know, the wait list is 4+ months long, and that's just for outside of school hours. Some schools are being really flexible and allowing students to have that type of access to a counselor outside of it. They don't have to do that, but some schools are really being good about that. But even that takes away from time that student needs. It could take away from minutes that as part of the learning plan. So it's a balance of determining as a parent what is that child's biggest need at this moment. But I think one of the things as parents we have to advocate for on the side is increased access for mental health in this region for our youth, because we're going to see it and in those social emotional things, and a 4-month wait time right now is simply unacceptable.
You could have a whole podcast on the mental health. I mean, I have a girl that's been sitting in the ER for 5 days waiting for a bed. I had somebody at Boston Children's for 10 days waiting for a bed and never got it and was sent home. It's horrific.
It's awful, absolutely awful. It actually, I'm preparing a letter to one of our state senators about it, but it's horrific to me.
It is.
It's simply unacceptable, because this is the time to pour the resources into these things now, because there's going to become a point where some of it's not recoverable.
Terrible.
And it's not fair, because it's changing a whole generation. You're setting that student or that child up for a lifetime of disappointment then, and it just snowballs, as we all know. And so we have to be their biggest, as you guys know, the biggest advocates we can, and you just got to keep fighting. You got to keep calling. You got to do what you have to do. Same with this. If you think your learning plan is not sufficient, advocate. Say, hey, I'm seeing this, and this, and keep fighting. Don't,
And support the schools, because the schools see it. They just don't have the resources and the staff. Go to your school committee. Go to your town council. Go to your state representatives, because there's got to be more money funneled to school districts so that they can start making effective plans to help these students.
You took my next question, Christine. I was going to say, what can we do as parents to help support? If we're the kids' biggest advocates, we're fighting for our kids, and to do that, we have to support their greatest allies, which are the teachers and the schools. So how do we do that? Not only through advocating to our reps, advocating to the school. What else can we do? Like you said, go to the PTOs, go to the school councils.
Letters to the editor, believe it or not, that gets people talking, making a Facebook, post about this. I think we have to get rid of some of the stigma, and then it's okay to talk about it. And then how do we support it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And share resources. I think that each school district works in a silo, and maybe this is the time to start looking at more regionally. and what is available regionally, and share staff or share resources so that more students can get the support they need.
100%, because I think we're going to see, like we both said, an increase in that as this school year goes on, and probably into the next couple of school years. We'll see the effects for it. So we got to start pooling those resources, kind of like what we do with Cape Cod Moms. It's putting, let's connect all the resources we have and pull the best for everything we need and disperse it equitably. Because we've got some great resources across this region.
Yeah.
So it's using them and connecting people to support the kids.
And thinking outside the box.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. We have to, it's changing education, really. It's making this no longer just a collaboration. Education's been collaboration within the schools, but education's about to become a collaboration of a community, really. And it's all hands on deck, whatever you can. And I know we're seeing that in Falmouth for what we're doing with our outdoor learning thing is a lot of collaboration curriculum-wide to support that outdoor learning and changing that. Resources, infrastructure. And so, again, it's all hands on deck to support whatever that need is at any given time. So,
and that's going well, isn't it?
It is. We've had some people reach out. Actually, we might be getting one of those cool special ed bikes, to get the energy out with the desk on it to try out with one of our schools, and
awesome.
Some other synchronous learning carts that'll help make it easier to teach outside. And but everybody's kind of pulling in and reaching out to their connections, and we're going to get there. And so I encourage other people in other towns, you can do it too. I mean, that started with me just reaching out to a couple parents and a couple teachers and saying, let's do it, and that's all it takes. And you can get rolling. I mean, again, you're your kid's best advocate. And by advocating for your kid, and really all kids, you're advocating for our future. It's really making our lives easier someday. We got to do the hard work now, right? So let's talk a little bit. One of the other things we talked about, compensatory services. Let's talk about, with the little time we have left, potentially the looming shutdowns. I know our governor he's really behind schools staying open. They're not super spreaders. A bunch of the Cape schools are getting rapid testing. That manufacturer is the best worldwide manufacturer of the rapid tests. Those tests are available in Europe, like over the counter at this point. Someday for us. But there are states that you saw in New York. I was really disappointed in that because I think they need to be in there, but I get it. Kentucky did the same thing, it looks like. So with potentially, how do we plan for a school shutdown again?
So one of the things that I'm asking, it's like, let's hope not, but knock on wood. So I think are pretty well versed on how to access now, like, and how to do Google Needs and that stuff. But what I'm asking for from school districts is that they pay direct to parents links and usernames and passwords for their students, so that that problem solving piece, if something is not working, there's an adult that might be able to have a password or a specific way to how to reach teachers. I hope that we stay open. My concern is that if the adults, like the teachers and the staff, start to get sick, there's not enough substitutes in the world to run a school building. So I'm hoping that as adults we stay healthy and that those people can continue to go in. So I sort of hate to be the Debbie Downer, but I sort of anticipate that might be the reason why we have hopefully short shutdowns.
I think that's the key, short. Hopefully it won't be 3 months, like it was before. It'll be short.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're kind of preparing all the districts. I mean, nobody's mandating, which I think I'm very appreciative of the districts, the way they are phrasing it to their employees and to their parents. It's not a demand. It's not a rule. It's not an order. We're asking that you follow these guidelines and that, we're counting on you. We're a team. And so I encourage all of those, if you are traveling for the Thanksgiving or Christmas holidays, adhere to the guidelines, because it's really, we got to keep our teachers safe and healthy, because like Christine just said, I don't think we're going to see it from the kids so much as we might see it from the adults having to be out, the teachers having to be out, because maybe their kids might have a cold symptom, or they might have a cold symptom, or, and then they're out for a week, because testing is not consistent at all. Some tests, I know in a family, a test came back just over 24 hours later, even though they had been tested after the kids, and then only one of the kids' tests are back at this point, and the other one's outstanding, and they were all taken around the same time. So there's going to be a lot of days where, teachers who have multiple kids, they might be out for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, waiting COVID results. So I just ask everybody adhere to these guidelines, because we need our staff in there to teach our kids.
And I think we just need to be graceful, and meaning like give people the benefit of the doubt. Yes, we're going to run into some bumps in the roads, but again, learning how to shift and transition and adjust to unusual events is a lifelong skill, and let's start demonstrating that to our kids.
And I'm just saying, in my families, especially the ones that have younger children, where maybe the family isn't tech savvy, I have encouraged them to get a lesson, like go in, meet with the teacher, get a lesson, get proficient at it. So if there's a shutdown or a snow day and it's remote, or you have the asynchronous days, that they can support them in some way. Also, if the technology is starting to die, if their Chromebook or iPad is getting old and it's not charging, like tell them now so they can order, because there is a backlog on getting technology into some of the school districts. So just stay up to date on those and keep them charged.
That's a really good recommendation, Tina.
Absolutely. I did just have one question that was texted to me, and that was about, are you seeing an increase in students having issues due to the blue light from all the screen time on the Chromebooks and stuff?
I'm old. I'm having issues.
So I went to the eye doctor and I said, what are your thoughts on blue blocker glasses? Should I get them? I'm in front of a Zoom all day long. And she said, there's no real scientific evidence that it works, but you should try it. And if it relieves some of your eye strain, then do it. She was also concerned about young kids in front of a screen all day long. And she's like, her opinion is the hour that you're on a screen, you should have an hour of no screen to sort of
balance it.
But yeah, so blue blocker glasses for everyone for Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've seen it in my house, headaches or fatigue.
Me too.
Yeah.
Like fatigue, tiredness. And so I got a pair, and there was a little grumbling about it, but they're blue. So
yeah,
we're happy with that color at least.
My daughter wears them. She swears she gets fewer headaches, but I notice that I'm getting more headaches now. I mean, I'm on it 8 hours a day, at least.
Yeah, and dry eyes. Yeah.
And I know it can make a difference how close that screen is to you. So like watching a television from across the room, if your kid comes home, and I get it, sometimes as a parent, you're like, okay, I'm making dinner, you can watch a show. You've been at school, especially in the wintertime. But instead of sticking them in front of the computer or the iPad, you're almost better off the TV, which is across the room. That distance will at least alleviate some of it. Sometimes it's how close you are to that screen.
Yeah.
Because then you're like this, like you see toddlers.
Well, I'm like that because there's screen share and there's an IEP on there, and I'm like, oh my God. Can't see it.
So, any last thoughts, ladies?
Oh gosh. Well, I just, I appreciate that you gave us the time to, join you and your audience. We're always here to help. So if, something comes up, you want us to come back, we're happy to do that. I would just say to parents, just, go with the idea that everybody has the best interest in mind. and, ask questions that you don't understand and just verify. How about you?
Yeah, and I would just say parents need to be easy on themselves. I feel like they're being really hard on themselves, and I think they're doing the best they can. And I think it's been proven they've done a great job, but the lack of regression that we're seeing, they're really doing a good job.
Absolutely. So everybody give yourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah.
Give yourself some grace. I think one of you said that earlier. Allow for grace for others, but allow for some grace for yourself right now, and allow for some grace for the kids. I mean, again, this is months. I mean, we're in month, I don't even know, whatever.
9, I think.
Yeah. Day, I lost count. I was thinking about it's coming up on a year. But you know what? We've been in it for the long haul. We've done it this long. It kind of sucks, but we've done it this long. We can keep going, and no matter how long it takes, we'll get back.
And we're gonna have some great stories for our grandchildren and their, our children's children.
I can't wait.
We've had an earthquake, a tornado. What else could happen?
Yeah.
But then they'll be in virtual reality school, and I'll be like, back in my day, you actually went to school. And then COVID happened. It's going to be great. So thank you so much, Christine and Tina, for joining us. CapeCodAdvocate.com is their website. Definitely check them out. They are great. They have resources. They have little educational seminars or groups that you do, which are really useful. So I really recommend that you check them out, and we'll touch base with them again in the new year and see where we're at again. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure. I really appreciate it, and I'm so glad you got this information out to our viewers.
Great.
Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody else, for joining us. We will not see you next week. It's Thanksgiving week. So whatever you are doing, however you are celebrating, near, far, or, if you're just having a good meal with your immediate family, we wish you the best. I hope it's a good one. Stay safe. We'll see you back the first weekend in December. And we'll have 3 episodes for you before the close of the year. They're going to be fun, including Tracy Lynn Purdy and a couple others. And Dave will be back making holiday drinks right before Christmas.
Awesome.
Hopefully in a cute Santa outfit. So you never know. Santa's helper. I don't know. But we'll see you all then. Have a great Thanksgiving. See you all next time, 2 weeks.